So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a quick intro. So the basic plan is I can intro everybody. We're going to have a few things to say. It'll be brief, and mostly we're going to try and make this sort of very much an interactive and kind of question and answer kind of process. So I'm Adam Kellogg. I'm one of the associate residency directors at UMass Baystate. Along with Zach Testo, I helped start the Wellness and Emergency Medicine Leadership and Wellness Fellowship. This is the first year I'm still getting the name down. But this is very much has been his baby, his sort of, he's been the driving force behind it. So Zach Testo is our fellowship director. He's EM faculty here at Baystate. He graduated from our program once upon a time, a chief resident many, many years ago. Rachel Gershaw is also on here. She is our inaugural Leadership in Wellness Fellow, doing her year of fellowship with us, and was also one of our residents as well. And then also joining us on the moving camera down there is Bree McDonald. She is one of our second year residents she's been part of our internal wellness committee. And so she's been a big part of a lot of the initiatives we've had. And so the plan is, like I said, there's a few things we want to talk to you guys about, and then really want to make this an interactive discussion and talk about wellness within emergency medicine, and then specifically at Baystate. So to kick it off, Rachel, would you mind talking a little bit about sort of, where this philosophy comes from?
Yes, 100%. How's everyone doing, first of all? Everyone good? All right, good. That's what I like to say. Everyone can hear me? Perfect. All right. So I'll just give a little bit about myself and how I got started with wellness, and maybe Bree's gonna find herself in my footsteps in a couple years here, hopefully. But but essentially, I kind of found myself being the go-to person for a lot of my classmates in med school, and then later in residency. So when they were having like a little bit of an issue or wanted to complain or vent or whatever you want to call it, I found myself kind of being that person. So hence I found myself kind of in Bree's shoes a couple years ago, doing all these sort of wellness things for the residency. So essentially any sort of activities we have a wellness club, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. I found myself kind of taking on a major role in that sense. So why wellness and emergency medicine specifically? You guys picked an awesome specialty, first of all, number one, but I'm a little bit biased. But we're nonstop. So you guys have crazy work hours. We're not your typical 9 to 5. We can't have our weekends off. We can't have our normal breakfast with our families in the morning and dinner at night. And so we're kind of in this interesting place where we have to work a little bit harder to feel well, to feel like we're giving ourselves our best. So emergency medicine is one of the highest rates of burnout, and I'm sure you guys have heard this term before. It's a sense of depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishment, and emotional exhaustion. I know Zach is smiling because usually I don't know them all three. Yes, finally got it right. But essentially, we're really high up there. A lot of other professions feel it. A lot of other specialties do as well. But the fact that we have this kind of on the go, you can't make mistakes kind of background to emergency medicine makes it a little bit harder and makes us need to work towards wellness a little bit more. So after we kind of talked about burnout for a couple years, and that was the hot topic, we're now switching over. Why are we switching over? Because wellness is kind of a solutions-based thing that we talk about. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the wellness wheel, but it's a 7-spoke wheel, and it talks about your emotional wellness, your intellectual wellness, physical, social. There's kind of a bunch of different things that it talks about, and you're at the center of this wheel, and it's hard without a visual to kind of describe, but you guys have probably all seen it. And essentially you need to have balance in all of these areas for you to feel well. In emergency medicine, we're, again, kind of always on the go. There's a lot of this thought that if you do something wrong, you should be embarrassed about it. You should feel guilty about it. And that's absolutely not the case. So we're trying to shift that paradigm. Like, we're allowed to make mistakes. The question is, how do we learn from them? How do we bounce back from these episodes? And how can we talk about them and then in turn become better providers and be better people because of that? So this is all about learning, and it's kind of about focusing on ourselves. And in emergency medicine, we definitely have to pay a lot more attention to these areas. a lot of the things that we talk about in wellness in general. We talk about fighting compassion fatigue, learning resilience. So really how to bounce back, from those things that go wrong on shift. How do we learn from them? And how do we treat our patients better because of our experiences? We want to talk about how we can sleep better because we have crazy work hours, how we can eat better, how we can exercise and fit in times for all of this, even after your night shifts and you're stringing them. So what are the solutions to that? We like to talk about stress reduction, how to stay safe on shift and after shift, how to decompress, debrief, and just really learn those life skills. So other things that are important that we don't always think about: disability insurance, life insurance, buying a house, things like that. These are all kind of our own, these all come back to wellness, and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of our patients. So that's kind of how wellness and emergency medicine was born. I think it's something that's kind of always changing and always needs to be require a lot of attention from us, because it's not intuitive and we do have to learn some of these wellness things. But we just all want you guys to be good, balanced doctors, the best that you can be. So hence the wellness, kind of like, we just have such a big emphasis on wellness here at Baystate. And I hope that wherever you guys end up to, they do have a big emphasis on that as well, because it's so important to our practice. All right.
Zach, would you mind saying a few things about sort of that culture of wellness at Baystate? Because you are kind of an integral piece of that.
Yeah, I'm trying, and I'd be happy to speak a little bit more about that. So Rachel touched upon a lot of different things that have to do with the individual journey that a lot of us go on. And we try to offer people as many resources for basically tailor-made approaches to how your wellness affects you and how your resilience affects you. That's on a personal level, but there's also this cultural change, which is glacial. The reason why we have a wellness department at Baystate is because we want to start to change some of the paradigms that have kind of entrenched themselves in medicine over the years. We're no longer accepting the fact that, well, we've always done it this way as an excuse to keep things as the status quo. There's efforts at Baystate to try to improve attending resident relations with consulting services and everything, because there's that emotional exhaustion and that depersonalization that comes along with feeling less than. And I'm sure a lot of medical students can often relate to this kind of thing, where we're moving away from the house of God and we're trying to get to a place where we're actually treating each other like human beings rather than some underling with a shorter coat than me. That's not the culture at Baystate, and certainly not in emergency medicine. It's something that we're trying to do. All of these different individual efforts mean nothing if we can't start to work on the place as a whole. So trying to reduce the amount of clerical burden or administrative time that you have to work on charts with, getting people accustomed, pros at the EMR, basically people who can become super users and not experience the burnout that the EMR faces, having emotional resources at Baystate, normalizing the experience of being able to deal with death and dying all the time, and being able to channel that into an emotional outlet, like having a therapist and having continuity of care, having time carved out, shorter work schedules to try to accommodate people who need to go to doctor's appointments, and hopefully in the future being able to carve out time for family appointments and all the other things. So the culture at Baystate is a very resident-centric one, where we're trying to bridge the gap between you becoming a professional attending who's going to have a long career, by preparing you with all of the different modalities to keep that wellness wheel in check, while also reforming the house of Baystate as well to try to accommodate a more healthy and well-rounded person. These are all kind of, they can sound like platitudes, but really it starts off the second you arrive at Baystate with an intern year that is a 1-month orientation period where you're basically learning alongside a family of people that continues on throughout, with Wellness and Resiliency Club every month, which has now replaced Journal Club. We talk about those life skills that Rachel had mentioned. We have basically a wellness department, and hopefully moving on to a chief wellness officer at Baystate within the next couple of years. That's my hope. That's my goal. That's what I'm pushing towards. We're trying to stay cutting edge and trying to employ an app to be able to measure levels of burnout weekly and see what we can do, make sure that people are getting enough PPE and time off. These are just a couple of the examples of what we're trying to do at Baystate. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And my God, what I wouldn't do for some precedented times at this, it's so hard to start off a fellowship with all, pandemic situations, but we're making the best of it. And Rachel has been absolutely amazing. So this is a place where if you come, there's going to be, huge emphasis on wellness, a huge emphasis on the personal journey that you're going to be taking. And basically the moral of the story is we've got your back.
Rachel, what is a fellowship in wellness leadership? What is that, and why did you do it?
A great question, Adam. Not because Zach paid me. No, I'm just kidding. So essentially, obviously, I liked wellness so much that I stayed to do a whole nother year of it. So there's kind of two components that are intertwined: the leadership aspect and then also the wellness aspect. So for leadership, I'm sitting on some of the hospital-wide committees for wellness. So I go to interdepartmental meetings where there's people from all different walks of life. There's administrators, there's doctors, et cetera, that all come together that work towards different initiatives for the hospital. And then I also help out with our department-wide initiatives. So I'm learning some leadership skills in that way. A lot of the wellness has to do with education. So I'm doing lecture series for the med students, for the residents, and then also for our advanced practitioners. So that's pretty much a wellness mini-series that I've been doing. Another thing that we do is the Wellness and Resilience Club, which had to be like hands down my favorite part of residency. Not that the learning and the medicine and all that stuff wasn't too, because that was good. But once a month on Thursdays, and I found this really unique from other programs, that we get together on a Thursday night in the attending's house. It's been a little bit harder with COVID, so it's been virtual, which has been a task of its own, but making the best of it. And hopefully you guys join us for trivia tonight too, because that's part of it. But anyway, yes, I'm not good at trivia, so if you're on my team, like, we're all in deep trouble. But anyway, so this Thursday night thing was what really caught my eye, and it's something that we're working to revamp and kind of refresh every month. So you go to an attending's house, usually there's food, we get to socialize, the entire residency is off, so it's once a month, everyone gets to go to it, which was also something I didn't see at other places. And we learn like these real life skills that no one else teaches us, that no one else tells us in med school, are going to be such an integral part of our life, because we focus so much on the science of it. So we kind of mentioned some other stuff before, the disability insurance, how to buy a house, what to do, like what kind of career you want. And then learning about how to come back from these like difficult situations, dealing with difficult consultants. So we learn like these real things in medicine that we're just not taught in med school. So we're working on that. That's one of my big projects. And then I'm also going to roll out a wellness coaching thing this winter. So essentially going to work with the residents on an individual level, kind of coaching them through one aspect of wellness that they all want to work on. We're also doing some research in there, because it's always good to have things published so other people can learn from what you're doing. And yeah, I think that's about it for right now. And under all that, we're learning like the basic curriculum for wellness. So that's the major thing. I'm sure there's little projects that are going to pop up along the way.
Sorry, I was typing stuff in the chat. So one more thing I want someone to, I was hoping Bree would just share a little bit about the experience, because Rachel was a resident here, Zach was a resident here, I was a resident here once upon a time before they invented this whole wellness concept thing. And have you seen sort of a different stage of this? And I mean, it was actually the philosophy of the program, even when I started residency in the early 2000s here, it was a relatively unique component to it, this sort of people first mentality. But I was hoping Bree would talk a little bit about what it's like to be a resident in the program now, and if she's had any particular reflections on that. especially
And
given she's our most
before
resident.
Bree starts, can I just clarify that Dr. Kellogg said that I was a chief resident a long time ago, and it was 3 years. Let's not like age me that quickly. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Bree.
No, night shifts have done that.
Perfect example of how attendings and residents talk to each other at Baystate. So sorry, I came in and had my computer going like a million miles when I got here. I was doing some wellness and riding my horse and was running late. So if you want to know how we can get wellness, and we clearly can. So I am extremely biased because I think Baystate is the best program in the world, probably why I'm going here. And all I have are good things to say. So I'm sorry if I'm super, Adam is typing things. You get a dog and a horse if you want, just so you know. So in terms of wellness, there's kind of multiple things, right? There's the kind of out of work experience as well as the in-work experience. And I can touch briefly on both of them. Again, I could talk for hours about this and I'll try not to bore you all. I think Rachel has already mentioned it a bunch in terms of on shift. What we really try to do is create a program where it's okay to say you don't know, it's okay to make mistakes, and be able to tell you're attending without kind of feeling that burden of like, I feel like an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's more of a collaborative environment. And I've had great experiences with all the attendings for that, where I can, you know, I've been on shift actually a couple weeks ago with Adam, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this patient. Like, I know something's wrong. I know I need to do something. Here's the things that I could do, but I need help. I don't know. And, you know, at that time, I don't feel horrible about doing it. It's just such a collaborative environment. And even with other residents, I can go up to a third year. I can go up to one of my second years and be like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. Can you just give me help really quick? And everyone's so willing to do that. And I think that's part of why I loved Baystate. And it's just that huge family feel that we have from day one. You're part of this family, the nursing staff, the techs, all the attendings, all the other residents are just always have your back. And in terms of out of work, again, like it was being mentioned, they try to give us plenty of time off in shorter hours so that we can pursue the things we like to do to keep us sane out of work. Like me being able to ride my horse, me being able to play with my dogs, even to the point where when I was interviewing here and I mentioned that my husband's family lives in Japan, I remember Ben being like, okay, so you're going to want to be able to visit them at some point while you're in residency. We can make that happen. Without me even having to say that, just remembering that we're people outside of work instead of that we're just here to like be workhorses for 3 years straight. And I think that's what really drew me to Baystate. So I don't want to talk forever, so I'd rather answer questions, what people have specifically.
Thank you, Bree. So what we don't want this to be just like an endless infomercial for Baystate. You know, I think that we are doing a pretty good job of wellness here. I think we could do better because I think as a specialty and as an entire field, medicine and EM can do better. I think a lot of programs are working really hard to improve and to acknowledge this. And so hopefully this is something you'll hear lots of good stuff about as you go out on the virtual interview trail. But we do have some, you know, this is a group of folks with a fair amount of knowledge about wellness, and we would love to answer your questions. We'll answer Baystate specific questions, but we will also happily answer questions about bigger picture things, about, you know, the world of wellness, about building resiliency, about the experience of residency, anything you want. Please, you know, feel free to go ahead and ask. If you're not comfortable putting it unmuting, we'd love to have you unmute and share the questions that way. We can also, I'll read them out of the chat as well if you prefer, but it's a small enough group that I feel okay talking. You guys should feel okay talking too.
Hi, I'm Prague from Canada, Prague, like the city. I was just wondering, because wellness is not just days off or vacation or health sick days or whatever, and we all know that now. But I was just wondering what kind of team building events, because sometimes feeling that you have that support is key, especially during residency, especially since our shifts are all over the place, especially after the first, because usually EM has that first month of getting to know your teammates for that year and for upper years, and some programs have a big and a little and other things like that for mentoring. So I'm just wondering what kind of things that happen at Baystate for creating that team environment, that supportive nature, so that, because that makes you feel much better when you go in, knowing that, you know, you can do that. Thanks. Cheers.
I can guess talk about it partially because I'm in the middle of doing it. So intern year, we do have orientation for 1 month, and we learn a lot about kind of becoming an emergency medicine physician. But it sounds like the leadership also makes part of it. The whole point is to get to know your intern class and become a family. So a lot of the events, I mean, of course, COVID pending, are designed to kind of get you guys to really bond and be together. Part of that was we almost always had the weekends off during that time. So I remember my class would hang out every weekend going to various different places in Western Mass to kind of get to know the area better. We do have a big and a little system too. So I'm a middle now, and I have a big that's a third year, and an intern who is my little. And a lot of times, especially at the beginning, we try to get together and get to know each other so that you have like that one person or those two people that you can go to before everyone else in case you need to. I think every class year also has a WhatsApp group to really like talk about things on shift, like, hey, I need something. Can anyone help? Like, even if it is like, I need to stay off to go do something, is anyone willing to take it? So I think that, and then the war club gets to know the rest of the residency. It's a day off that we all have off together so that we can do things. And then conference, when it's not COVID, everyone gets that time off protected so everyone can go and hang out.
I will just add a little bit to that, which is we have a pretty great sim program where people do a lot of team building exercises inside there, and you get to know your people's strengths. People have different little niches where they fall into. My trivia, which will continue on post-COVID, but was really, really inspired by the fact that none of us could hang out in real life. So we were doing it every week during the surge of COVID. That in addition to the Big Little system. And then as far as department wide, I've participated on a beer league softball team with the nurses and other residents and everything, and even attendings. I know that there is a soccer club where people were playing indoor soccer, and there's also a cycling club where people were basically taking day trips to cycle out to local breweries and stuff. That was all organized by our residents themselves. So these are all initiatives to try to get people connected. Obviously, during COVID, some of these things are a little bit less feasible, but you kind of get the gist of there's options for different things.
One of the things I really liked that you and Rachel had initiated, Zach, was the outreach to other programs, taking this beyond just the emergency department, because it's all well and good if we get our act together, but a lot of the most stressful experiences we have is our interactions with other specialties, with other disciplines. And so you can be having a great day with your own team, and then that can really ruin it. And you were doing some wonderful things, sort of getting other groups involved so they could come and lose to us at trivia or other activities, and bringing in the surgeons and the anesthesia teams and the internal medicine folks. And I thought that was great. In general, I think this is something to be aware of. You know, I really think to be aware of what is the culture at the programs that you're looking at, because it can make a huge difference on how much you want to keep doing this when you finish residency, no matter how good the training is. You know, I really hope that you look at places that pay attention to this, because you still want to be enjoying this when you get to the end of training after 3 or 4 years.
I just wanted to add one thing to that, and something I know is still going on. So like when you go to a resuscitation, I know sometimes as an intern or a med student, you're like, what do I do? Like, I don't have this direct role. So one thing I think our program has done pretty well is at the beginning of a recess. So when it's called overhead, it's all hands on deck always. So every person, the med student, the resident, the off service, like everyone should show up to that. And then the third year, who's generally leading it, will assign a role to everyone. So whether it's the second year, who's usually on airway for us, but they have a role. The intern has the ultrasound, or the med student has the ultrasound, or sometimes the off surface. So someone always has a specific role. And I think that really has brought forth the like teamwork mentality. So we go around, we introduce ourselves, we know the nurses in the room, we know the tech, we know exactly like who we're dealing with, who's everyone, who their names are, and then what everyone's going to be doing while they're in there, which helps clarify everything, but also gives everyone like a sense of purpose while they're there. So I think that's also really helped the culture and the teamwork at Baystate too.
Thank
One
you.
question on there, which might have been answered. I was responding to something in the chat, so I might have missed it. But I know we touched on it a little bit with the different services. I think you mentioned that they also join into trivia to lose to emergency medicine. But I was wondering what is there much team building and wellness activities done interdepartmentally? So like one of the things I thought was really interesting is so much of who I see residents interacting with is residents on other services. And you learn a lot about perceptions of different services when you rotate through. And so I can only imagine that having really strong relationships with residents in other specialties would also be super helpful. Is there much that you guys have done in light of that?
So I would say that a lot of it, as far as our scheduling goes, you do rotate on a bunch of different off services. And I always liken it to like, it's sort of like working in an office, right? There are definitely people who, that one person from down the hall that you're not going to get along with, but the more people that you interact with and the more people that see who you are, the more likely you are to be able to get along with people. So there is the inherent fear of the other, and we're trying to bridge that gap. The thing that I remember we did when we used to have journal club was we had a journal club with the surgeons, and that was one of the best things that we ever did. And we're trying to bring something like that back, because we got to see everybody outside of scrubs in somebody's backyard with barbecue and a couple of drinks, and to be able to wax poetic about whether or not to get TXA was a really, really cool experience. So we're trying to do more of those things. Trivia is the best we've got right now, but once we can start to get some live and in-person stuff, I look forward to that being something that we can start to put into play a little bit more.
Awesome. Did that stop just prior, or because of COVID, or did it stop prior to COVID?
I don't think it was COVID related that it stopped. I think it was just logistical.
No, but we do a lot. Like, I know at least our surgery department and the EM department are pretty close. So there's a lot of like unofficial things, barbecues and things that happen separately, that we're not like forced to hang out, but we hang out just because we like each other. So I guess that goes to say something too. Same with all the other off services. They're all like, everyone's awesome. Everyone becomes really good friends. You get to see everyone in the hallway. It's harder with the mask on right now because you have to recognize everyone from this amount of their face. But no, it's a good culture there.
I posit by the end of this, everybody's going to have like Jack Nicholson eyebrows where they can just tell the entire story with just your eyebrows. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say pre-COVID, I definitely had surgery residents. I think I had some peds residents and some peds IM residents over for barbecues last year. Even one of the IM guys brought me my favorite restaurant for dinner last night because he was on his EM rotation. So we're pretty close with people outside. You just got to get to know them on your off service.
I have a question. So I'm Steve from UNE, fourth year student, and a trend I've noticed is that there's always a stressor, and it's all I need is to get into medical school, and then once you get in, all I need is to pass the boards, and then all I need is to get into residency, and just keeps going on, and you think you're going to get past one stressor, and then there's another, and it so happens that the stress of being responsible for patients' lives seems to me like probably the highest stressor we're going to have at different stages in our career. So my question for you is, how have you used that stress to try to get used to it from a wellness standpoint, to be comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing right now, or, this is not the way it should go. Maybe there's several nights where you work, or several days in a row where each shift has this something that just breaks you down over and over again, and you feel like you're doing right by your patient, or whatever it may be. Do you guys have any examples or any ways that you've kind of dealt with the real stress of patients' lives?
I can touch base on that one. So I think part of what you're saying is the fact that we tried to do wellness now, like it's not just like a pushed off thing, like in the future you'll have more time to sleep, in the future you have more time to exercise and to buy your house. So that's why we're trying to educate people now, because we want you all to feel like, it's not just the next step, but like you're living your lives. This is life. And that's why we try to have it really well balanced. And have a big emphasis on that during training, that it's not just like, oh, in 3 years, you'll be able to go to your family holiday. It's like, you know, we switch off every year. You get Christmas or New Year's. Like, we make sure everyone has at least one holiday off. And if you didn't get it last year, you get it the next year. Like, we're making sure that everyone's just like well in the moment. And that way you don't always feel like it's like that next step. And, you know, next year, maybe I'll focus on myself and stop focusing on studying so much, et cetera. So I think that the big part of it is talking about it. And that's why we have our wellness and resiliency clubs, where we all come together and we're like, hey, this happens to me. And then all of a sudden everyone around the room is like, hey, that's happened to me too. And you're like, oh, okay, this isn't just me. This isn't just me feeling that way or feeling beaten down from that experience. And then we also have departmental debriefs after like big cases. So if we have, you know, a bunch of like young children that die in a car crash, things like that, we have like automatic things set up for you, debriefs, places you can go and decompress right from shift. So in the moment, and then also a couple of days later to like check in. So I think that part of it is like, we're here now, we're living this, and we're all living it together. And so we don't want you to put things off till later. Because then they build up, and then you feel like, what just happened in the last 3 years? Now I don't feel well, like I'm miserable. I don't like emergency medicine anymore, which we don't want any of you to say. So I think we have an active role at trying to combat that, like from day one. Does that answer it, sort of? Anyone else?
Yeah, because I think that's what we instinctively do, is we try to sweep it under the rug and just, you know, pretend that it's okay. And yeah, and then life's over eventually. So we have to address it and confront it. So yeah, thank you.
I think addressing it and, you know, having a good outlet is absolutely essential. There's this old mindset of you signed up for this, and that nobody could really ever explain what you're signing up for. I mean, there's just the heaviness and everything. And the normal kind of progression of life is you keep waiting to have more time, and it's a lie we kind of tell ourselves. But the reality is that the hits that we take on shift, albeit, you know, even if it's just a little one or a big one, like you're talking about, a big major case, over time, statistically, and not to be morbid, but, you know, we're higher likelihood to develop substance abuse, depression, and suicidality. It's a unfortunate fact that's been proven time and time again over studies. So what we're trying to do is insulate and also protect. We talk about resiliency as like a bucket, and sometimes these major cases take a lot out of your bucket, and we need to start to build tactics early on in our careers. How do we keep the bucket filled, and when it gets depleted, how are we going to bring it back up to a level where we can float?
Hi, my name is Rashmi. Oh, sorry. Did you want to? Okay. My name is Rashmi. I'm from Boston University, also a fourth year. I just had a quick question along the same vein, how COVID was for you guys in your hospital. What kind of support did you get from the hospital and from your attendings, even down to like the minutia of how you decided who would do intubations and things like that? How did you feel like the department and your superiors were supporting you during what was obviously a very tough time, especially for emergency medicine physicians? Thank you.
So I have to say, because I was a third year at the beginning of this, so I'm like at the end of my third year. And there was one attending that said something to me that like really stuck. And she said, I hope that we look back 6 months from now and we over-prepared, we overreacted. And that's sitting where I am right now. That's like exactly how I feel. And I'm glad I'm on that side of it. Like I felt like from the beginning, kind of everything was spearheaded. Things were in motion. Things were happening fast. They were protecting the residents, but also respecting the fact that we have to learn and we're in this pandemic together. So there was initially kind of a layer of, I guess, protection over the residents, and then sort of like, you know, we're all in training. We're all doctors. There's not, you know, we're all at the same risk. So I think we tried to, I think we tried to initially just learn as much as we can, and then make educated decisions, which is what we do best in emergency medicine. We don't always know all the answers. So I think in general, to be in the emergency department during something like this was the best place you could possibly be, because that's what we do. We take a little bit of information and we make the best educated decisions for our patients that we can make. So that's sort of what we continue to do. So I feel like we had a really good response. We had, enough PPE. We didn't, everyone like in the department was making sure they were, shoving stuff into their basements in the case that the residents ran out of, gloves and masks and things like that. So I never really felt like we were gonna, have that much of an issue. Like I always felt like we were well taken care of, and that just like kind of echoes throughout the whole program. It's just that we were well taken care of, and I knew that our leadership would pull through and figure things out, because they always do. So anything else?
Bree, what was it like to be an intern during all of that? Do you have a little bit of a different perspective? Because I know you really got excluded from more, especially initially.
Yeah, intern year. So especially at Baystate, we're off service for a majority of our intern year. So I was off service for most of it. I actually was finishing my cardiac critical care month when it first hit. And they were like very protective of us. Anyone that was supposed to be a PUI like had any chance of having it, we weren't allowed to see. We weren't allowed to go to the room. We were supposed to pass it on to the fellow. So they were very protective of us not getting the exposure to that. And then as it kind of got worse, we actually had a lot of our rotations canceled. Like I was supposed to be on EMS and optho and was not allowed to be on it because they weren't sure they were going to have enough PPE and didn't want me being exposed to it unless I was fully protected. And optho offices were closed. So, I mean, our leadership was very good at kind of finding what needs we wanted to fill during that time, and kind of trying to get us whatever experiences, whether it was, did we want to go into the department and work as what we called the co-venger, where we would help and outside the recess room, kind of like almost taking orders and like passing it off from people in the room and outside the room so we could still get some experience of how to treat them. Did we want to do reading months to prepare for boards? Did we want to focus on like ophthalmology out just at home? So they really worked hard to still give us a meaningful experience, even though our rotations were canceled, and then kind of tried to pull us in wherever. Like my first week of my second year, I did an extra week of anesthesia because most of my anesthesia month was cut short because of COVID, and they didn't have any patients to intubate. So I just filled it in so I could still get that experience, so I'd feel comfortable intubating as a second year, because that's like the majority of what we do in recesses now.
It was really important from a program standpoint to get the residents back into doing their job and getting their training as quickly as we could. And so we just had to ensure the adequate PPE piece of it. But it was really important to make sure that the second year residents got to intubate, the third years got to run the resuscitations. The people got to actually do the thing that they were supposed to do in this sort of very short time that you're a resident, and to be deprived of a big chunk of your education. We talked about, the effect it had to those couple of slow months on some residents at, really key times in their development, to lose a few months of where everything is COVID. All you see is COVID. Even if it's not COVID, everything is COVID. And just that loss of development. Fortunately, as the case count dropped off in Massachusetts, for those who are elsewhere in the country, we're down fairly low. We're probably having a little bit of a fall resurgence with school opening, but the case positive rate is a little over 1% right now, which is really pretty good. And so we're seeing our ED is back to sort of a normal volume almost. And we're seeing sporadic cases only, but still sort of taking lots of precautions. We're in that sort of dangerous phase where people are getting complacent and not necessarily believing that it's still out there. It's still out
there. Hi, I'm Melody. I have a quick question. I'm from Nova Southeastern down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So, oh, hey, what's up? So, my question, I guess going off the COVID question too, is that, okay, COVID happened, and I think it was a true test of communication for programs. And I wanted to know how your communication is in the program. Do people respond to you in a timely manner? if you felt like you had to reach someone, is it like a day kind of response or within a few minutes? I think that's just really important. Thank you.
The residents respond to me very quickly if I text them directly. Other than that, we're going to let everybody else answer. I can't give you a good answer.
I think with the multimodal fact that we can email and WhatsApp and text and call and page and core text and all these different things, you kind of get a sense of urgency based upon what mode you use. But I would say lines of communication are absolutely open all the time. Whenever ultrasound students rotate here, I just give them my cell phone number because I try to get back to them. I work nights, so I sleep a lot of days, so that's the hard part for a lot of people. Communication during COVID, I think, was exceptional. There was WhatsApp groups that had a mile a minute things. There was a ever-populated Google Doc with every single piece of newest information, evidence-based or otherwise, what our newest hospital protocol was, copied and pasted in there. There was a weekly faculty meeting where everybody was brought up to date on all the changes. Administration was absolutely open and honest with everybody at weekly conference. For all the residents, basically you had the admins at your disposal for a half an hour to ask any questions that you could. I think Baystate really excelled when it comes to that, and that continues on to this day. And that was kind of the case before, but it's made everything a little bit better as far as streamlining and emphasizing the importance of knowledge and open communication.
I mean, I have to say in general that in the first week of residency, I had like my program director's cell phone and home phone number, like every APD's, cell phone number, email, every attending that comes and talks to you. So it's very much like an open culture. I've never had someone be like, oh, why are you texting me? Like attendings, whatever you want, like after shift, if you have a question, quick email. People are up at weird hours of the night and respond to you at 2 a.m., like that sort of a thing. So yeah, I'd say like it's pretty easy to talk to anyone you need to. And even administration, like they're in the department working shifts. So like our chief, he's down in the department every week working a shift. So it's a really like close-knit culture and you really get to know everyone. So you don't feel like, I don't know, you're just like an intern asking a question. Like we all are pretty open, so.
And these are
awesome.
great. And these are great things to ask about because these are going to be important things that you should be asking about at every program that you go interview at and finding out what it's like there.
I had a question. What kind of things do you guys have in place to ensure wellness when interns and stuff are off service, like in surgery generally, right? Like they mostly are pulling 16-hour days continuously. And that can lead to a not so nice outside of medicine life. What kind of things do you guys have to ensure, that kind of wellness out when they're off service?
I mean, I can talk about this too. I mean, I used to always say like, you can do anything for 4 weeks. And every time we're off service, we're like, thank God we chose emergency medicine. It's just a career reaffirming thing. But that being said, I think weekly conference, everyone's off on Wednesday. So you like get to see your friends every Wednesday, you get fed. Obviously Zoom conferences, you didn't really get to do that, but hopefully we're slowly bringing that back. So you'll get that experience again. So everyone's sitting together, having chicken fingers and mac and cheese and like hanging out during conference. So you always look forward to that, like Wednesday getting you through. And then everyone, again, that Thursday wellness club that we have once a month. So again, everyone's off, like your trauma rotation can't hold you because our department will make sure you're off for that like amount of time, even if you're scheduled for something. So once a week you have that break. And then also most off-service rotations, you end up being off at the end of the month too, on the same weekend with your class. So I know at least my class and the other classes, you always kind of looked forward. So there's always like something every week, every couple weeks to look forward to where you're going to be together. And then before you know it, like time is over. But that being said, like people are always checking in with each other. With 16 residents, you'll have a buddy on a lot of the rotations too. So you'll be with a co-resident. Sometimes you're by yourself, but you'll learn quickly that like everyone at Baystate are such good people that you become friends and you actually look forward to even trauma. Yes, I'll say it out loud. Like even my trauma surgery rotation, I really liked everyone on my team and we just got through it together. And you find like the little things, whether it's a coffee break or like that just get you through. And you do it, and then you realize like it's been 4 weeks and you're done and you're never going to do that again. So.
And the company that you share with a fellow EM resident on an off-service rotation is a fairly new initiative that our program director Ben Osborne tried to. He makes your entire schedule a year ahead of time, so you have day one, what your rotations are on and all these things and what shifts you're working, and pairing people up, having a buddy on trauma and ICU rotations has really made an impact to be able to protect people and to have somebody on their side in their corner who's experiencing the same thing. And then we preach a strict adherence to duty hours. There will be no violating those things. You guys are there, but there should be no way that anybody is being asked to do anything that wouldn't be above board, and to just really adhere to the 80-hour work week when you're on certain off-service rotations. And that's been a major initiative. We really try to protect people because like Rachel said, it's okay for 4 weeks, but it doesn't mean that it should be the norm that you're going anywhere outside of those bounds.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I'm a fourth year at St. Louis University. I'm from northern Massachusetts. So my question is, I guess, about informal types of wellness, like Western Mass. I honestly haven't gone much besides like the Basketball Hall of Fame or anything. So what type of things are there to do for, I guess, fun or wellness outside of the hospital?
Bree, you got this?
All right, girlfriend. So Western Mass native right here. So I don't know about Northern Mass, but Western Mass is amazing out here. I don't know what you're into, if you're an outdoorsy person, more indoors. We have a ton of stuff to do outdoors, a lot of hiking, a bunch of rivers that you can go, like kayaking, canoeing. And then, I mean, you're from Massachusetts, quick drive kind of anywhere. If you want to go out to like city vibe, Worcester's less than an hour away, can easily travel there. A lot of people actually live in Worcester. Some of the other residents from other programs and will commute in. And then the Berkshires are like another 45 minutes away. There's Tanglewood there. There's a lot more outdoors things to do. And then a lot of our residents personally live in Northampton because Smith College is there, and it's kind of a big, like a little mini city. And there's a lot of good restaurants to go to, bars, again, when it's not COVID, and things to do out there.
There's also like a lot of informal groups that anyone can join, where like one resident will be like, hey, we're going to this brewery, or we're going to this place or this person's house and having a barbecue, and it's like a free for all and people just show up. Like it's very much like open to everyone. So there's always just things to do, or every weekend someone's having a cookout, hosting it, and puts it out to the whole, like we have a Baystate all 3 years have like a WhatsApp, which I'm now kicked out of, but whatever. But we still have like a group in Northampton. So if people are doing something in Northampton, there's a group, there's all sorts of things. We had, I think Zach talked about our Beersicle Society, which we started a couple of years ago too. So essentially there's a big bike path. So I personally got a bike just to be part of the Beersicle Society. I'm not gonna lie, because I was feeling left out. So there's a bunch of breweries and you just kind of meet up like one day on a Wednesday. It's great because a lot of people are off, and we'll just ride to different breweries, and everyone, people just show up. That's kind of why it's great. We were doing Wellness Wednesdays when like the breweries were open. There was like a trivia night. So there's plenty to do, drinking and also non-drinking related. Like everyone shows up. There's a lot of informal stuff going on all the time because there's like, almost 50 of us. So someone's always like down to do something. And I'm also from the North Shore, so I get it. It's great out there too. I really have no complaints.
Is that what northern Massachusetts is North Shore?
I don't know. What's northern? What are you talking about?
I thought that was Maine.
I live close to New Hampshire, in Andover.
Okay. I'm from Danvers, so I get it. It's
Okay.
close.
Yeah.
Western Mass is good. I have no complaints.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. My name's Gabe. I'm from Western U, Comp Northwest. I was reaching out to one of our alumni who's in your program. He was telling me about this trip that the program puts together I think it's either in the Catskills or the Adirondacks. And I was hoping one of you could elaborate on that trip for anyone else here who hasn't heard about that, because that seems to be intertwined with resident wellness. I was also wondering if there's any other trips like that that I might have not heard about that get put on by the program, or if there are opportunities to put together things like that in the future.
We are recording this. I just want to remind Zach and Bree and Rachel as you answer that this is being recorded.
It is a great educational learning opportunity at the beginning of every year that you get to know your colleagues better at, and I have no further comment.
Gabe, it's called Retreat, and it is a 2-night, 3-day long team building excursion. Yes, held in the Catskills, isolated only to a handful of attendings and all of the residents. And it is something that people hold very dear and has been a longstanding tradition at Baystate, and is basically the only time during your residency when all 3 classes will have no clinical responsibilities whatsoever, and the only responsibility is to forge a bond, because these are the people that you're going to be in the trenches with very soon. So.
It's actually a great experience when you're an intern. That's how you get to know your 2nd and 3rd year class, because orientation, you're spending the whole time with just your co-interns. So that's really when that's where I learned, who Rachel was. And I think Zach was actually there for my intern. So you get to learn to be closer with the attendings that are there, as well as all your co-residents. And that's kind of, once you come back from retreat, that's when you're like, all right, I'm a part of this family now. And that's usually like the 1st or 2nd week of your intern year.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
We sometimes try and use that monthly wellness and resiliency club as sort of like mini retreats. One of the attendings has a lake house in Sturbridge, which is about an hour away. And so once a year, he makes the mistake of inviting the entire residency there. And so everyone goes and swims in the lake and ruins his relationship with his neighbors and rides his jet ski. And then we try and fish everyone out of the water and talk about something like, pediatric resuscitations or debriefing, or one of those like challenging topics, which is always it can be a little bit of a challenging mix, but it's pretty worthwhile. We get a few minutes left, so I would love to answer any other questions that folks have.
I'll ask a question. So my name is Jared. I'm a 4th year student from Texas A&M. So I'm an older non-traditional student. I'll be showing up at residency with a wife and kids and stuff. And so I was wondering if somebody could speak a little bit to the experience of people in my situation, the older non-traditional students, somebody with a family at your program.
I think I might have to take this one because I'm the only one with a family. I did not have one as a resident, but several of my classmates did, had families when they were here. It's been we've taken non-traditional applicants all the way through. Folks with some life experience often bring great perspective to a residency program and can really sort of provide, good mentorship sometimes to their classmates. One of my best friends from residency was 10 years older than everybody else, had been in the Navy and been a GMO, and being on call at the same time as him was great because he knew how to answer those phone calls about how to replete calcium in the middle of the night. And so I could lean on him a whole bunch, and he would also just reassure me that it was going to be okay and I was going to make it through that night. So having folks with more experience can be great. The other thing really valuable is they're funny on retreat. Just the way the residents are entertained by me as I old man around on retreat. They really enjoy, the folks who want to go to bed at 10 o'clock. Or who are, on the other hand, the other group is the ones who get away from their children for 3 days and they're 22 again. So there's often a big mix of sort of how things go, but we are very much open to it. We do not discriminate by age.
There's quite a few residents that have kids right now as well. And I think it makes their presence all that much more meaningful, because when they do have time to come and spend with us, we know that it's like a special time because they have their family obligations and they have their kids, and we're like, yes, it's just like a special thing when they come and actually get to hang out with us. And I think they feel the same way. So there's never any pressure because we know that you have real things going on at home with kids and diapers, and I don't even, God knows what, because I don't have kids. But I think that they're like an integral part of our residency too, because they bring balance. So I think that, you know, you're definitely not alone if you have kids. There's plenty of them in the residency. So
one of the highlights every year is at the intern welcome picnic that the program director hosts in his yard, all the kids of the residency running around and destroying his place and tackling his dog and having a great time. And it's been interesting watching my kids grow up with that group.
I believe there's also an intern scavenger hunt that the resident children do, correct?
Yes, that's my daughters, because they have to find all the interns and then nickname them something. Superheroes, Harry Potter characters. They come up with something every year.
I have a quick question. So my name's Seth. I'm from the University of New England. I'm a fourth year. You guys talked a lot about kind of reducing clerical work and the once per month work club meetings. Do you have any tips for kind of when we're talking to other residencies and getting them to speak beyond the once or two times per year retreats? Kind of like those ongoing different kind of roles that they can have and the wellness committee can have.
just really quickly about like clerical stuff. So I know a lot of attending stress it, and we as a culture at Baystate kind of try to do the see one, do one. So when you see a patient, you write your note quick, you go on to see the next patient. So at the end of the shift, although I usually have a few notes to finish up, I'm not going home with like 4 hours of notes to write. So there should be enough balance, and you get better and better at writing your notes over the years. And Ben, our program director, Ben, he usually says like, you shouldn't be there for more than like an hour after shift writing your notes, because we have these 9-hour shifts and they're designed to keep you well. So you have enough time at home and have enough time with your families and have enough time to do stuff on the end, that you shouldn't be spending 4 hours writing notes when you get home. So I think that was a big thing for me, is that I didn't want to feel that burden when I got home and had to be doing that. So if that's your style and you want to just go and write notes when you get home, like that's something you figure out, but you're certainly not expected to just be a machine, you know, like spitting out patients and seeing them and not getting any of your own work done, so that at the end of the shift you feel like, oh no, like what just happened, and now I have 5 hours of work to go do and I can't even make dinner and go to sleep. So that was a big thing for me. So if that's important to you, I would say like ask how long residents are staying after shift. Is there an occasional shift where I'm there 2 hours because I had a really sick patient? Yeah, but was that the patient that I learned so much from and like would not give that experience up for anything? Yes. So.
And Seth, I do, I want you to be open and honest, asking other programs about things. The way that I always try to frame wellness in my mind is sort of those areas of burnout. So depersonalization, emotional exhaustion, and then lack of self-worth. And if you can frame your questions along those lines of what is a program doing specifically in those 3 types of domains in order to protect you, that's a good place to start. And if you have specific questions from there, but if you're feeling lost about what to ask people, that's where I would start.
I think it's really hard for all of you guys, given that everything's virtual this year. You don't get the experience of kind of having those pre-interview nights where you can kind of interact with the residents to find out, like, do they seem really burnt out? Do they seem like they can't like hold a conversation with you? Do they look like they're about to fall asleep while they're, eating their dinner? Which makes it a little harder to kind of weed out the wellness part. I remember always asking, do you sign out patients, or are you expected to stay to finish? And then like Zach said, how long do you usually stay after a shift? Do you have to complete your notes a lot at home, or, can you complete them while you're on shift? And then I would specifically ask, what does your program do for wellness? And I think one of the red flags for me was be like, oh, well, we have this, one day where we sit in a conference room for 8 hours and talk about how to be well. And then I'd be like, okay, but like, what about on shift? And they'd be like, yeah, we just have that one day. And then I'd be like, okay, so this is like, they're checking that box, but actually aren't like living it. And so that's kind of, there was a couple programs where I was able to kind of weed things out from that.
Make sure you ask if they have a snack safe in the department like we do, because It's very important.
It has to be a safe, though. It can't just be a cabinet. There has to be a lock on it, or it will be empty all the time.
Writing that down right now.
All right, I do think we need to wrap things up to respect everybody's time, and because we've got more meetings to do and trivia and more Zoom, more Zoom. Happy to take if there's anybody has sort of a last burning question. Otherwise, we will wrap stuff up here. Thank you so much for joining us for this. I hope you got a little bit out of it. I hope if you are not otherwise occupied, please do that link into the chat, but please go ahead and register and join us for trivia tonight. It should be a lot of fun. The plan is to split the students out onto the teams with residents. We're just going to do it all randomly. And it should be a lot of fun. Zach makes his own rounds of trivia that are generally excellent. He's raised the bar to make them particularly challenging because we expect to have a lot of teams, and so we really need to stretch things out. Hopefully we'll figure out what prizes are going to be, but we'll figure that part out. Maybe it'll be like a spot in residency. This is all for fun. This is all for fun.
It is all for fun. If you guys know of other people who just are general trivia lovers, even if they aren't necessarily interested in our program, forward them on the link and have them fill out the survey. It's the more the merrier. Get to know us. Come spend an hour or two with us, and it's all pop culture trivia. I'm not giving you medical trivia. There's like name that tune and all that stuff. So be prepared, put on your thinking caps. I would love to see you guys tonight. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I really appreciate all your great questions. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. See you guys at 7.
Thank you for holding this. Stay safe. Cheers.